Whose house is this?" It was my mother's voice, the first time I had heard in person in 3 years. It wasn't the tone of someone worried about her daughter's safety. It was cold and suspicious, like she was appraising some foreign object that had wandered into her territory. The very fact that I was standing on the lush green lawn of this upscale neighborhood must have shaken her sense of what was normal. Seeing me dressed in a refined, high-quality dress probably only added to her confusion. And yet, her gaze completely ruled out the possibility that I might be the owner of this house. At best, she likely assumed I was some kind of personal assistant serving the wealthy residents who lived here. Nothing more than that. In her eyes, pity and contempt blended together effortlessly. Behind me stood a newly built $1.2 million home, its white exterior gleaming in the sunlight. From the back of a large moving truck, experienced workers were carefully carrying in the designer furniture I had personally selected. And standing in front of me were my father, my mother, and my twin sister, Jenny Fisher, frozen in shock. Apparently, they had been taking a walk through the neighborhood where one of my father's golf buddies lived. On their faces was the exact same absolute judgment of my worth they had shown 3 years ago when they threw me out of the house. To them, I was still the daughter who wasn't worth sending to college, who should be struggling at a minimum wage job in some cheap apartment. It was only natural that this deeply rooted assumption couldn't be reconciled with the reality unfolding before their eyes. They still didn't know. They didn't know who owned this luxury house. They didn't know how far I had come in the past 3 years, far beyond anything they could have imagined. I observed their shaken expressions calmly. I wasn't surprised. I had always known a day like this would come. No, perhaps I had been living all this time precisely for this moment. Somewhere deep inside, I had been waiting for the instant when their faces would be painted with shock, shame, and despair. Before I spoke, I closed my eyes for just a second. What flashed through my mind was the cold, silent dining room from 3 years ago, the place where everything began. The day my college acceptance letter arrived. The cruel words my father said to me that day, words I would never forget. The eventual moment they stood in front of my house was the climax of my own epic story. A story that began with the humiliation I suffered that day. I slowly opened my eyes, looked straight into my mother's, and said clearly, "This is my house." The words pierced the calm summer afternoon like a knife, embedding themselves between them. As if time itself had stopped, the 3 of them froze completely. The color drained from my mother's face, her practiced smile stiffening and cracking in place. My father frowned as though he had just heard a language he couldn't comprehend, his mouth slightly open. And then there was my sister, Jenny. She looked back and forth between my face and the luxury house behind me, her beautiful features twisting with jealousy and confusion. The unwavering affection she had always received from our parents, and the brilliant future supposedly guaranteed by her expensive education. All of it must have seemed to fade in comparison to the value of this single house. The first to break the silence was my father. He stepped forward and spoke in a harsh, interrogative voice. "Kelly, is that really you? What is the meaning of this? Are you joking? There's no way someone like you could afford a house like this." There was not the slightest hint of pride or congratulations for a daughter he hadn't seen in 3 years. There was only irritation at a reality beyond his understanding, and the same old contempt he had always held for me. In his value system, I was still the worthless daughter. 3 years ago, diploma in hand and full of hope for the future, just like Jenny, he had said this to me. We'll send Jenny to a prestigious university. The $65,000 annual tuition is a matter of pride for us. But you're different, Kelly. Investing in someone as introverted as you won't bring any returns. Get a job immediately, leave this house, and become independent. That was all I was given at 18. No congratulations, no encouragement, not even a shred of affection. Just an expulsion notice delivered like a cold business decision. And now, that same man was standing in front of me, looking down on me once again. I answered calmly. Why not? I've been working desperately for the past 3 years. Working? My father snapped. Doing what exactly? His tone grew even more aggressive. He probably suspected I had done something illegal. To him, his daughter's success wasn't something to celebrate. It was an abnormal situation that demanded suspicion. That unshakable prejudice struck me as almost ridiculous. When I didn't answer right away, my mother hurriedly grabbed my father's arm and turned a strained smile toward me. Please stop. Don't interrogate Kelly like that. Oh, my Kelly, this is truly amazing. Such a wonderful house. You really worked so hard, all by yourself. We're so sorry we didn't know anything. Why didn't you contact us, even just once? We could have celebrated for you. Her words flowed smoothly, as if she had rehearsed them in advance. The ability to instantly assess a situation and adopt the most self-serving attitude possible. That talent of my mother's almost inspired a sense of admiration in me. But I could see the calculation behind her words as clearly as if it were written out. They were the kind of people who could flip their attitude just as quickly as they had once looked down on me. If this house hadn't been behind me, my mother would probably still have assumed I was nothing more than a servant in a wealthy household. That speed with which she changed sides spoke more eloquently than anything else about who she really was. My father cut in, interrupting my mother. Don't say such stupid things. This doesn't make any sense. Kelly, tell the truth. What kind of work did you do to get the kind of money it takes to buy a place like this? There was no concern in his voice as a father. What showed through instead was his desire for my success to be the result of something shady, something he didn't have to accept as legitimate. More than anything, he was afraid of the collapse of the story he had always believed in. That the outgoing Jenny would succeed and the introverted Kelly would fail. I looked at them one by one. My sister Jenny stood there in silence, her face a mixture of jealousy and confusion as she glanced back and forth between me and the luxury house. Her sense of superiority had always depended on my existence as the unremarkable younger sister. That assumption was crumbling right in front of her. Did they really deserve to hear about my past 3 years? About the night I was thrown out, shivering as I fell asleep in a rundown apartment I'd rented with the little money I had. About working days as a clerical employee at a real estate company, enduring unreasonable demands from my boss, and spending nights desperately studying marketing through online business courses. About devoting every weekend to small freelance jobs worth a few $100s each. While Jenny posted photos from college parties on social media, I was drafting proposals for clients. While they vacationed in Hawaii as a family, I ate instant meals 3 nights in a row. All of that hardship, however, was an investment in my own future. An investment I made in myself, the very person they had written off as having no value. I had no need to make them understand it, and I had no obligation to explain it. I didn't answer my father's question. I simply said calmly, "What kind of work I did isn't important. What matters is the fact that I bought this house with my own strength. The daughter you decided had no value." The words seemed to strike deep. My father faltered, momentarily at a loss for words. My mother's forced smile vanished. Jenny looked away awkwardly. They probably hadn't expected me to bring up the past. Or maybe they had assumed I would forget. But for me, the declaration they made that day had never faded. It had become my driving force. I continued. 3 years ago, you didn't give me a choice. You just told me to leave. But because of that, I became free. Free from your values and your judgments. For the first time, I was able to design my own life. That night of despair, I lost everything. And at the same time, I gained everything. Released from the cage called parental protection, I had no choice but to stand on my own. My clerical job at the real estate company taught me how business really worked behind the scenes. The knowledge I gained from online courses quickly turned into freelance work, giving me small but steady successes. I worked without weekends, and by the end of the first year, my freelance income had surpassed my office salary. The key to success was reading the situation. I found a niche market that no one else was paying attention to and poured everything I knew about digital marketing into it. At first, no one cared, but just as I had predicted, the market expanded rapidly, and my name slowly began to circulate within the industry. I was lucky with connections, too. Clients who appreciated my passion and integrity introduced me to other clients. By my second year, I went from being a sole proprietor to founding a company. By the third year, its annual revenue had surpassed $1 million. Of course, I didn't need to tell them any of that. They only saw results, and those results were standing right in front of them. I had blocked them on every social media platform and cut off contact with anyone we both knew. They had no way of knowing what my life had become. They had thrown me away, and in that very moment, they realized that what they had discarded had turned into a shining diamond. My words dropped a heavy silence between us. My father opened his mouth as if to argue, then closed it without saying anything. I could almost hear the sound of his once unshakable world beginning to collapse. My mother glanced anxiously at his face. Jenny looked down, as if she herself were being accused. The silence was broken by a broad-shouldered man who appeared to be the moving company's site supervisor. He approached me while checking the documents in his hand. Miss Fisher, as scheduled, will move the large server racks into the second-floor office of Fisher Enterprises. May I request your confirmation as its CEO, ma'am? I saw all three of them freeze as they came to realize who I really was. My father's eyes widened in disbelief. My mother murmured, "Fisher Enterprises? A company CEO?" under her breath. Perhaps they had assumed I was simply a highly paid employee at best, but the fact that I was the owner of a company, more than the value of the house itself, forced them to confront the true scale of my success. I smiled and nodded to the site supervisor. "Yes, please go ahead. The wiring team will come in this afternoon, so installation alone is fine." My father stared at me, stunned, as I issued instructions with practiced ease. The expression on his face shifted from shock to confusion, and then gradually to unmistakable panic. I didn't miss that change. I could practically see the calculator in his head working at full speed. Daughter, worthless, expelled. Daughter, CEO, luxury house, assets. That calculation determined his next move. As if entering a business negotiation, my father suddenly changed his tone. "Kelly!" He called my name in a fawning voice I had never heard before. "So, you're running a company now. That's incredible. Truly, I have to say, I see you in a new light." I looked at him quietly. The abruptness of his transformation was so extreme it was almost comical. His forced praise continued. "No, really, this is impressive. This makes your father proud. Right, dear?" He turned to my mother for agreement, but she still hadn't fully processed the situation and only nodded vaguely. Well, actually, my father finally got to the point. I'm in a bit of trouble. My business hasn't been doing very well lately. Cash flow's been getting tight for some time now. Choosing his words carefully, he began to confess that his business was failing. My mother clung to his arm and looked at me as if she were on the verge of tears. Jenny watched him with concern as well. Right there in front of me, they began performing the role of a pitiful, struggling family. I stayed silent and watched their act. I see. This was it. The moment they grasped the scale of my success, what came to their minds wasn't congratulations or regret. It was usefulness. The daughter they had once discarded as worthless now looked like a source of money, a lifeline to save them from ruin. The sheer ugliness of it made me feel sick. Perhaps thinking I was starting to sympathize, my father pressed on. Jenny's tuition, to be honest, is becoming very difficult to cover. At this rate, she might have to drop out of college. The instant I heard that, something inside me went ice cold. Jenny's tuition. That was the reason I had been thrown out of the house. What had once been their absolute justification was now being used as a tool to extract sympathy from me. My mother stepped closer, picking up where my father left off. Kelly, please. She reached for my hand, but I instinctively pulled it away. Come back to us as our daughter again. You're a successful CEO now. Help your family. Please help your family. I looked down coldly at my mother's hand, left hanging in midair. Then I slowly scanned their faces. My mother looking up at me, close to tears. My father staring with naked expectation. And Jenny biting her lip anxiously. Family? I asked quietly, but clearly enough for everyone there to hear. When exactly was I ever your family? The question struck them like an unexpected blow. My mother gasped, her pleading expression freezing in place. My father's face shifted from shock to rising anger. They must have believed that no matter how cruelly they treated me, I still clung to the idea of family somewhere in my heart. That illusion needed to be severed completely, just as they had done to me. What are you saying? My father snapped. We're your parents. We're your family by blood. By blood? Is that your definition of family? I replied calmly. 3 years ago, you threw your blood-related daughter out of the house without hesitation, for one reason only: no investment value. Is that what family does? No, that's a business decision. You didn't treat me as your daughter. You treated me as a bad asset. In that case, I'll treat you as a business proposition. I met my father's eyes and continued. I'm afraid I find no reason to invest even a single dollar in the project of saving you. The risk is too high, and the return is non-existent. That's something you taught me yourself. Those were his words. Exactly the words he had once thrown at me. 3 years later, they had come back to him like a boomerang. His face flushed red with anger, then drained pale with humiliation. He had nothing to say. Because it was his own logic, his own philosophy. He had spent years believing in a world where only the strong survive. And now, in that very world, he was unmistakably on the side of the weak. And standing before him as the strong was the daughter he had once discarded. My mother spoke in a strained, almost strangled voice. Kelly, how could you say such things? We raised you. For 18 years, we fed you, clothed you. Are you saying you've forgotten that debt? Debt? A dry laugh escaped me. What you gave me was the bare minimum to survive. You poured limitless love and opportunity into Jenny, while I received scraps of attention. That is not a debt, nor is it even a duty. Had you given me even half of what you gave Jenny, I might have achieved my success far earlier, far greater. Her words cut through Jenny, who had remained silent beside me. She looked up, her eyes wide, startled. Perhaps she had been unaware of her advantage all this time, or maybe she had noticed, but turned a blind eye, unwilling to give up the comfort it brought her. Mistake? I shook my head preemptively at my father. No, it's not a mistake. It's a choice. You chose Jenny and discarded me, that is all. And the consequences of that choice are this situation right now. Can't pay for her tuition? She might have to drop out of college? That is not my responsibility. That is the inevitable result of your choice. My final words lit a fire in the last shards of my father's shattered pride. His face flushed with humiliation, and his trembling fingers pointed at me. Silence! He roared like a beast. Always twisting logic. That's why you were never likable. And now you succeed and lecture your parents. How dare you? There was no logic left in his words. Completely defeated and cornered, all he had left were hollow, vicious insults. And that final, desperate lashing out revealed his true nature perfectly. He never admits fault. He only attacks and tries to eliminate anything that doesn't suit him. Just as he did to me 3 years ago. Seeing that hideous truth, I understood completely. These people will never change. I turned my back and began walking along the stone path leading to the front door of my new home. Behind me, I heard my mother shout, "Wait, Kelly, don't go." But I didn't turn back. I am no longer your daughter. Placing my hand on the heavy oak door, I delivered my final words. I am Kelly Fisher, founder and CEO of Fisher Enterprises. I have nothing to do with you anymore. They fell utterly silent. They knew the company's name. I was sure of that. It was a rising star in the industry where my father's business operated, a company that had grown rapidly over the past couple of years. He could never have imagined that the talented CEO leading it was the very daughter he had thrown out. That, I knew, was the final, decisive blow. I stepped inside and slowly closed the door. The last thing I saw were their faces, etched in despair. As the door closed with a heavy thud, my past was completely sealed away. I stood in the center of the spacious living room, still sparsely furnished. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, painting streaks of gold across the floor. The silence felt comforting. 3 years of struggle had culminated in this very moment. There was a sense of accomplishment, but there was no soaring joy, no cleansing relief. Instead, my heart felt astonishingly calm. When they had begged for money, any last flicker of feeling for them had vanished entirely. They were no longer my family. They were nothing more than former business associates. And that transaction ended. Weeks passed since I had closed the door. My daily life revolved around managing my company, leaving no time to dwell on the past. I had grown accustomed to life in the new home, and long evenings immersed in work in the spacious office brought me a fulfillment I had never known. One afternoon, my personal assistant called me with a hint of unease. "Ma'am, Miss Jenny Fisher is on the line. She says it's about college tuition and insists on speaking with you directly." I paused, my thoughts halting. Jenny, what could she possibly want now? I had instructed my assistant not to connect any calls from family. Still, the word tuition piqued a small spark of interest. "Put her through," After a brief pause, Jenny's displeased voice came through the receiver. Kelly, it's me. Yes, that's right. What do you want? My voice sounded colder than even I expected. Let me get straight to the point. Because Dad's company is failing, my tuition can't be paid. So, logically, you should cover my tuition from now on. That's how it should be, so take care of it. It wasn't a plea. It was as if she were delivering a decree. Jenny truly believed it was my duty to use my earnings for her. I answered quietly. I refuse. There was a brief silence. Then Jenny's tone suddenly changed. What? Refuse? Wait a minute. The money you make is thanks to Mom and Dad raising you in the first place. Don't you think you can help out a little? Is that too much to ask? Her outrage was exactly what I expected. Deep down, she still thought she was superior. She believed my success was a fluke, that I was supposed to be supported, and that she was entitled to that support. You're living in a luxury house, spending extravagantly, and you don't even care that Dad and Mom are miserable because of it. You should think about your family, at least a little. You ungrateful. I listened silently as she vented. Then, when she finally ran out of breath, I spoke calmly but clearly. Jenny, you still don't understand anything, do you? What do you mean? I lifted the receiver slightly from my ear and continued in a steady voice. The money I earned wasn't because of any help you gave me. It was because you kicked me out, and in a way, I'm thankful for it. Without the weight of your expectations, I was free to carve out my own path. Don't be ridiculous. Which one of us is being ridiculous, I wonder? I continued. Do you really understand where your tuition money came from? It was earned by Dad and Mom, and now that source has dried up. That's all there is to it. You've been living on the infrastructure of your parents' assets, without the ability, or the need, to earn for yourself. But that infrastructure no longer exists. I heard Jenny gulp on the other end of the line. The problem you're facing now, tuition you can't pay, possibly having to drop out, is exactly the same problem I faced 3 years ago. The difference is that I had nobody to help me. You still have your parents, though they seem unable to do anything now. I delivered the final, decisive line. Earn it yourself or drop out. Those are your two options, Jenny. Just like me 3 years ago. Welcome to the real world. I ended the call without waiting for her reply. Immediately, I pressed the internal line button on my desk. Yes, ma'am, replied my assistant calmly. Block any future calls from Jenny Fisher and anyone else with the Fisher surname. Do not forward any of their messages to me ever again. Understood. After giving the instructions and hanging up, the office returned to complete silence. Yet inside me, a quiet fire of anger, the kind I hadn't felt since that night 3 years ago, was burning. Jenny's shameless demands, my father's ugly tantrums, my mother's calculating tears. They had learned nothing and reflected on nothing. Now, as the CEO, it is my responsibility to protect my brand and my company. I had to neutralize the risk they posed once and for all. I opened my laptop and began typing a post on my business social media account, which had tens of thousands of followers, with a voice calm yet personal. Today, I want to share a little personal story. It's about why I have completely withdrawn from the most challenging investment of all, family. 3 years ago, my family deemed me not worth investing in and kicked me out with nothing but a few dollars. I had no educational opportunities, no support for my future. Recently, after starting my own company, they suddenly appeared, not to congratulate me, but to demand millions of dollars in investment to save their failing business. Today, my sister, who has benefited from my sacrifices, called me. She assumed I was obligated to cover her college tuition. I refuse all these unreasonable demands. This is not revenge. It is a CEO's decision to protect my life and the lives of my employees. If you are going to invest in something, I sincerely hope it will be in something that enriches your own dignity and future. I hit the post button. The honest, emotion-controlled post seemed to resonate with many people. My smartphone buzzed endlessly with notifications of support and encouragement. The post spread rapidly. Through local online news coverage, almost everyone connected to my parents, former business partners, members of my mother's community, saw it. A few days after my post, my father's company completely collapsed. The few business partners my father still had left withdrew all at once after seeing that post. Who would continue doing business with a heartless man who throws his own daughter out of the house? One former partner answered that way in a news interview. He lost all credibility in the industry and never managed to recover. My mother was effectively expelled from the upscale residential community that had once been her greatest source of identity. Friends who had once competed with her in displays of status suddenly turned their backs on her, avoiding her openly while mocking her behind closed doors. Their house was foreclosed, and every piece of jewelry and every luxury brand item that had once supported her pride was sold off. And then there was Jenny. Her future, too, was sealed by that post. She became known on campus as the sister who tried to extort money, lost her place entirely, and eventually dropped out of college. With no work experience and no skills, only an oversized sense of pride, she now wanders from one relative to another, begging for money, or so I've heard. Of course, no one helps her. I began receiving belated messages of sympathy and admiration from relatives who had once looked down on me, but I instructed my assistant to block them all. How they live their lives now is no longer any concern of mine. My post on social media was not an act of revenge. It was, in a sense, an IPO announcement, a public declaration that ownership of my life belongs entirely to me. My focus is not on their past, but on my company's future. Next quarter's goals: expansion into new markets, and the life I will continue building, one that depends on no one. Their story is over. Mine has only just begun.